Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Epic Mind Visions. Today I have my good friend Kelly DeBrocke with me. Kelly and I met through another coaching program called Go for Your Win. It was an offshoot of, I believe, Fit for Service back in the day with Aubrey Marcus, and it was coached by Eric Godsey, who's an amazing coach. And we went through that program together in a small group and had some great access to Eric and had a graduation ceremony in Austin. We had a really tight, cohesive group the whole way through. So Kelly and I were able to go through a lot of life transformation and kind of get clarity on what we wanted to do with our lives. And that was what, about maybe 2 years ago when we went through that program. And
Yeah, it
so
was.
now I find both of us are just kind of going for our win in whatever way. And that has a lot of crossover with, an epic mind vision in general. So I wanted to bring Kelly on, hear what she's doing, how she's rolling in the world, what she's doing to go for her win, and the epic mind visions that she has for herself. Kelly, welcome to Epic Mind Visions.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Absolutely.
It feels like such an honor to share this space with you, to be honest.
Yeah, I wish we could spend more time together. I saw you in Tampa last year briefly, and when I get back to Florida, I always think of you and I think, oh man, I want to go up to Tampa or St. Pete and spend more time with Kelly. So we have to do that more as I get
Yeah,
out there.
definitely. Definitely. This is a great spot. I was a nomad for so many years and finally found this place to land, and it's been a trip. It's a vortex out here for sure.
Yeah, totally, totally. Well, and if you ever get to Austin, give me a call.
Yeah, I was out there actually for my somatic breathwork certification
Oh, cool.
a couple weeks ago. Yeah. One
Wow.
of many of
Okay.
the things I'm sort of dipping into right now.
Well, that sounds like a good place to dive in. What's going on with that? Somatic breath work.
Yeah. So I've always kind of had this dichotomous approach to my interest in my work, but I worked mostly in corporate. And so over the course of the last year, I started to dive into different certifications and just different areas of work to start my own business. So I'm in the middle of a couple of things right now. I actually got involved in real estate and purchased a home, and then I have an Airbnb attachment unit to that. I've got an LLC going for all different kinds of stuff. Right now, I'm working on some of the most recent certifications I've received. So that's somatic breathwork, which happened in Austin, psychedelic somatic facilitation, which was through a company called the Embody Lab, which we were just chatting about a few minutes ago, and then also an NLP certification through a company called Empowerment. For people who aren't familiar with NLP, it's neuro linguistic programming. So the takeaways that I've had from it are really how to use language in the ways that I relate to myself and other people. So it has a lot to do with unpacking self-limiting beliefs and sort of taking radical accountability for yourself, and the ways in which you can train your brain and your unconscious to your benefit. So I've been mixing all of these things together for a really excited program that's coming out soon for a coaching business I have now.
And you've done all of this since we graduated from Go for Your Win?
No, this was all in the past year. The year before that, I was a nomad when we met, actually. So I was living between like Scottsdale, Chicago, Boston, California, the Bay Area. I was kind of hopping around to a couple different places. Got a place in Sedona even for a month, Martha's Vineyard. So I was kind of all over the place at that time. And that I think was a really integral part of my journey and discovery process post that coaching program, and then also directly following the ayahuasca trip that several of us in that program went on together. So I think that was, yeah, the last 2 years have kind of just been a crash course with releasing and then, creating anew. So yeah,
That sounds
it's
like
been a
there's a
fun time.
whole bunch of creation going on there. So you completely left corporate, went nomad, and then started all of these certifications and learnings since then?
They kind of happened on top of each other. Some of my
Okay.
most recent corporate jobs were remote. So I just
Right.
I eased into curating the lifestyle that I have now. And that I think is actually one of the elements of my program is living with intention and living with a blueprint versus sort of allowing life to happen to you. So curating your lifestyle and curating your communities and your wellness practices and sort of not just starting a business and checking the boxes for things that need to get done, but like who do you need to step into as a woman? I do female entrepreneurial embodiment. Who do you need
Great.
to step into as a woman? Who do you need to be in that space? Not just what are the things that need to get done.
Right.
So,
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, that sounds like a lot. So I've been exposed to neuro-linguistic programming NLP, but I don't really understand it. I sense that people have done it to me. Like, like when I'm in a conversation and business or networking or something, and somebody like pats me on the shoulder, I'm always like, they're doing NLP on me or something. So I don't know if there's like a simple way to describe like some of the techniques and how they work,
yeah.
to get those things, to get over those things in your head.
So, I think probably the most well-known person or practitioner of NLP is Tony Robbins, or he's one of them
Sure.
at least. And
He's pretty well known. That's for
yeah,
sure.
he's fairly well known. He started off actually his career with, and I'm going to butcher how I explain this, but the general idea is that he would do unconscious reprogramming work with cigarette smokers.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of an element of a hypnotic state or a state of being that you need to work with people in, and also the use of language. There's so many different sort of psychological teachings that we learned about, whether it's like if you observe someone's eyes and where they move when they're speaking, then you can generally get a sense of what they're thinking in their head based on if they're kinesthetic, visual, or auditory, like the way people receive information and the way they interpret the world. If you become more familiar with and start to understand them on an unconscious level, then you're able to use language and use rapport and use your skills in a way that connect to them on a deeper level. So a lot of salespeople probably use NLP
Right.
techniques. A lot of coaches use NLP techniques. One of my favorite is a language. It's just like a language technique based on the Milton model. It's called the Milton model. And that is a model of language that's based around using huge ambiguities so that people are able to formulate their own understanding of what you're trying to say. And the best example that I can give of this is like my favorite one in my life. At every Joe Dispenza meditation retreat, he starts his speech on the first night with the same sentence every single time. And I've been on four.
Oh, wow.
And every single time it's given me the goosebumps. And he says, he comes on stage and there's 2,000 people in the room and it's this very like magical anticipatory moment. And he says, you're all here because you know something. And you don't know what that is, but you know you've known it your entire life. And there, you just get that, like, everyone in the room, what does that even mean? You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, if you took that out of context, it would be like, what are you talking about? But in that setting and with his presence and in that space, it creates this electric vibration of community because everyone can relate to what's being said in such an individual way because it was so
Right.
ambiguous that they apply it so intimately to their life and their experience that it's powerful. It's a powerful moment. So it's a powerful way to use language. That's like one example I can think of.
Wow. Yeah, that's super cool. I know several people who have done NLP, but I've just never like caught the thread and followed it myself. It's never been the right time or had somebody with an offer that was like, like go for your win. It came up and it was like, I'm doing that. It was just perfect timing in my life and the structure of it felt right and everything, but I've never had that with NLP. But I suspect that at some point I'll dive into it too, because I'm always looking to push the edges of personal growth, you know,
Yeah.
in,
Yeah.
in every way.
There's layers to it like any modality, like in breath work, in NLP, in somatics, like there are people who are really distinctly that practice. And so I, with most of the things I've learned, have taken what's resonated with me and left what hasn't. And
Sure.
that's why I feel like I've been able to form this really beautiful and dynamic practice of self-care and self-healing because it's not just top down or bottom up. It's both. Sometimes it's inside out. So having a well-rounded approach to holistic wellness, I think is super important. And also, I tend to find that some of the people in those different holistic wellness modalities can sometimes get a little bit dogmatic about their practice.
Hmm. Yeah,
Like
I've experienced that
psychedelics people
too.
are like,
Yeah.
it's psychedelics. Breathwork people are like, it's breathwork. Parts work people are like, it's parts work. And I'm kind of like, well, it's all of it.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I agree with you because I've intuitively gone down my own path and been guided profoundly through that. I've never had that kind of like get stuck on one thing idea in my head. I've always been open to the new possibilities of just being coached in the moment. Like even just to go back to Go for Your Win, it's like that was pretty ambiguous program. Like it wasn't
Yeah.
super structured. It wasn't like you're going to get XYZ out of it. It was like, here's a group of people coming together that want to evolve, that want to push the boundaries of who they are, go for their win in their own lives. I want to be in that resonance. I want to be in that frequency. I want to be in that energy. Let's do it. Let's go. I know I'm going to get something out of it. And I trust myself that I'm going to be able to take what's useful and leave the rest behind and integrate that into the other experiences that I've had along the way so that I can create this overall version of my life. Like, as you started to say, it's like creating that life that you want to live, that you strive to. That's what we're doing here with like Epic Mind Visions. Like I feel very grateful that I've been able to go through my own process of healing and learning and creating the life that I have now. And I love my life, and I want everyone to be able to experience that. It's like it's always changing, and there's always things that you could make better, but the gratitude that I feel and the joy that I feel in every moment is like nothing I've ever had before. And I want to share that. I want to be able to convey that to people, that it's possible. Like no matter where you are now, no matter where you've been, you have the ability to create this life for yourself.
Oh, yeah, I love everything you just said 100%. The thing that felt really alive for me, like the word that kept coming up when you were sharing that, was flexibility.
Hmm.
And I suppose flexibility to me, and this is another like NLP concept, is that whoever has more flexibility within the interaction will usually win the interaction or will win the
Hmm.
communication.
Hmm.
And I've found myself thinking about things like mindset work with a level of flexibility that hasn't been matched before. So like when someone is mean, like the way I would interpret that pre doing a ton of self work and sort of spiritual journey and dark night of the soul and all those things would have just taken it personally and been reactive, and that would have been my
Sure.
response. Now I have flexibility with how I see things. Like I meet these things in my life that happen with curiosity. And one of the first questions I always ask is like, how can I be accountable for this? So if I'm in a relationship where there's a ton of conflict or there was an argument with a friend or whatever, the first question I ask myself before reacting in like in an unconscious manner is, what am I accountable for in this situation? How can I move forward taking the most accountability?
Like
And
like
usually,
radical responsibility.
oh yeah, for sure,
Right.
100%.
Right.
The like kind of ironic thing about it is that the deeper into this lifestyle you get, I'm like, oh, I'm consumed by it. Like this truly is how I live. Every interaction I have, or every situation, every obstacle, every loving moment, like I meet that internally with, how can I be accountable for this? How can I support this? Or how can I allow this feeling to move through me? How can I interact better as a human? How can I support someone else in this? Like, those are naturally the questions that come to me now versus, some of the pain and trauma and dysfunction that dictated my thoughts prior to like really getting into this lifestyle of self work.
Right. Right. If you can, walk me through a little bit of your process of getting these certifications and bringing in these different modalities and putting them together. What did that journey look like? Like, how did you come across a new modality, perhaps like the somatic breathwork certification? Like, when you're doing the work that you're doing, all of a sudden you come across this other modality and you're like, I want to integrate that into my work. Like, what does that look like for you? Because it sounds like you've pulled a lot of things together over time. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah. Um, I mean, honestly, I would say that it started from a place of becoming or a desire to become more well-rounded in my own healing journey. At the beginning, it had very little to do with whether or not I would offer services like this and more about what the best decisions for me in my life were. So, yoga was without a doubt my first modality that I
Mhm.
started, and that was when I was 17. And I would say every couple of years, I would sort of latch on to something new, like something that would bring me to a little bit more of an expansive space. And I was working through quite a bit of trauma, so I was moving at a slower speed with it. And I would say that when I hit psychedelics, when that became one of my more primary medicines for self improvement and healing, that's when things started to expand at a really accelerated rate and also in like a very synchronistic manner. So more recently, making the decision to really like leave corporate and really be an entrepreneur and have multiple businesses going and offer a variety of things, there was a little bit of strategy behind what I chose to formally receive certifications in. For the most part, I really am of the belief that every unique individual has their own set of needs and their own set of preferences around different healing modalities. And so the wider array of things that I could become educated with to support people with was my goal. So top down would be NLP, right? It's very kind of thoughtful and centered in the mind, and it's like the body follows the mind with that approach, right? We do reprogramming and then your actions will follow. Breath work is very bottom up. It's very, there's things stored in your body and you have to release those things to create space first, and then you can work with your mind. Like they're in some ways conflicting approaches. And then I believe meditation to be more of like an inside out energetic practice. And so what I learned about myself was I'd never really attached on to one modality or the other in a dogmatic way. I
Mhm.
was always kind of searching for more. And then I found the pieces that made me feel the most whole and me feel the most well rounded and resourced for how to cope with things in life or how to continue on my self development journey. And so those were the things that I chose to move forward with certifications for.
Hmm, interesting. Well, we have a similar path. Yoga was definitely my gateway modality as well, if you will. Like I started
Yeah.
out being challenged by a mentor to do yoga, and I've said this before, is that at the time in my life, I was so disconnected from myself. I was so mentally oriented that I couldn't even call it yoga. I called it stretching on a mat.
Yeah.
It just, I couldn't even put myself into that frame of being like, oh, I'm going to do this Indian, Hindu, spiritually, like whatever that was, however I defined that in my head. I couldn't even do that, but I started doing it. And he challenged me to do it for 21 days to create the habit. And the next time we had coffee, he's like, how's that going for you? And I was like, why wouldn't everybody do this every day? Like, this is amazing. And then I
Yeah.
did end up doing it every day for a year and a half and almost every day for 3 years. And I got attached to that modality and I kind of burned myself out. I burned myself through it. I burned a lot of trauma through it. I burned a lot of programming and just getting a lot of things out of my system, which was amazing. It was unbelievable. And that's why it worked for me. And that's why I'm saying, I've kind of been guided, like, even though I did get super attached to that specific modality for that period of time, it was just a step on my path to the next phase of healing. And then I was prepared for it. I kind of, weaved in meditation into that, that time frame. So that also led to the next steps and ending up with plant medicine work around 2017 and 18. So 2018 really is when I started plant medicine work. And my body at that time, my physical body, my nervous system was then kind of prepared and centered and grounded enough to handle that kind of experience. And that led to much more healing and unraveling and uncovering the things that I needed to overcome in my own life and the limitations that I had mentally to be able to heal at a much deeper level. And it's been an amazing ride for sure. And I've also added modalities along the way, stretching, breath work, I'm in Austin, I do ice baths, like whatever, all of the things, right? But it's always been what I've specifically been called to and never oriented towards like a guru or it's written in
Yeah.
this book or whatever. It's always just kind of been a trusting in my own felt experience of it that was, I think, lent to a much higher level of awareness for me instead of being like, I'm following this path because this is what these people say that I should do, or this person says that I should do. It's more of that felt experience of being like, I know this is right for me. I sense it in my very being and I'm doing it because I want this for myself.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I also think, too, one of the things that I'm really passionate about is accessibility in the spiritual community. One of the big discoveries I made in the initial phases of starting my business was, and it was in the discovery phase, it was chatting with different women around where they wanted to see different areas of their life improve and what they wanted more of, what they wanted less of. And for a surprisingly large amount of women and women that I know in my life as well, one of the issues around spirituality for them was that they felt like it was inaccessible.
Mm,
And there was a lot of sort of, well, what if I don't want to go to Burning Man? Like, what if I don't want to put pasties on my tits and run around at parties? And what if I don't want to burn sage? And what if I don't want to go to Peru and sit with ayahuasca? And what if I don't want to, like, all these things that felt like weren't them? And so
right.
that's what was inhibiting them from
Mm,
entering a state of divine connection with source or with God or with whatever you want to call it. And so I really sat with that and I was like, that's not what spirituality is, right? Like it's a form of it and it's a community of people who express themselves in that way that are a part of sort of that signature and also having a relationship with source or spirit or I'm use the word God interchangeably has almost, it has nothing to do with that. And so what I love to work with women especially on is like their cycle. I love working, like doing cycle syncing things and doing cycle scheduling because that's one of like the most intimate and divine and related to the cosmos element of being a woman. Like we are on a cycle with the moon, our
yeah.
body, our hormones, our moods, our ability to digest, like our lymphatic system, everything is connected to this cycle that we're on. And sometimes I start with that because I'm like, you've had that for the majority, in some women's cases of their life, depending on their age. That's something you can deeply use as just something of physical connection. Like you don't even need to leave your house for that. You can practice grounding in the morning. There's like medicine in connecting with the earth, and that doesn't require you to wear a costume or show up in any way. So a
Right.
lot of the things that I teach and that I work with are like a really foundational and fundamental start for some people to understanding what their connection with source is. Like, how do I tap into that? How do I utilize my intuition? How do I make everything sacred? How do I live life as a ritual? And some people have felt like they don't have a seat at that table because they're intimidated by the predominant crowd of that
Mm,
of that space. And so I really want to step into that space and be like, you can have a seat at my table. Like,
wow.
we don't
That's
need, like, we can all be the truest to ourselves that we can be.
right without all of that extra. Yeah, wow, that's fascinating. I love that. And I think that for me personally, it's like the more intentional I've gotten about how I spend my time, how I spend my energy, who I have in my circle, divinity and spirituality is everywhere, right?
Oh,
It's in
yeah.
everything that we do. And I think what I'm hearing from you is that once we get connected to that, wherever that be, whether it be just at home sitting in meditation, you don't even have to have an altar, right? It's just like
Mm-hmm.
just sitting in meditation or doing yoga or whatever it is, you can find it there. You can find it everywhere if you just are open to it and you are intentional about it. It shows up. That's been my experience for sure.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Would you start living intentionally and in alignment? I think I really started to understand what manifesting even meant
Right.
once I stepped into that space of like living aligned.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, living in alignment is definitely a game changer. I
for
guess that's
sure.
the ultimate result, or yeah, result of doing the work is living in alignment. And when you're in alignment with your higher self, you're in alignment with your 3D matrix world. That's what I always come back to is that how do I live my life in the matrix in a way that is in alignment? And there's always going to be things that are pushing me on or off my path and all of these things. That's just the duality that we live in. That's the way I've come to accept it. It's like that's the fact. Like I can't just go to Burning Man every day. I can't ecstatic dance 24 hours a day.
Yeah,
You know, it's like I can't
yeah.
do that. I can't meditate 24 hours a day. Whatever the modality is, it is those are only parts of the whole, and we have to make money. We have to deal with our families. We have to have connection and community, and all of those things bring up more challenges that we face. And in my estimation, the challenges that we face are put in front of us for our own evolution. That's the way I live my life. That's the way I frame any of the challenges that I come up against. So that's really a cool way to approach the work that you're doing. I think is to allow this access specifically for women to be able to not get caught up in the hooplas of spirituality or whatever and be intimidated by something that is it's that's not all that it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's just one aspect. It's just one possibility in the overall frame of it. I've never been to Burning Man, but
Me neither.
I feel like I would go, but it's like it's not
Me
something
too.
that yeah, it's not something that I feel like I have to do to prove myself spiritual to
Right.
myself or to anyone else, you know?
There's
It's
no
just
entry fee for God. Like,
right. Yeah.
you know? Yeah. One of the things that is feeling really alive right now too is entrepreneurship for me has been one of the most spiritual practices I've
Yeah,
ever taken on.
for sure.
And I think it's shocking to me. I would assume, I can't speak for everyone, but I would assume that most people who are business owners or who work in corporate don't necessarily associate their spirituality to that. For me, because that's such a strong lens through which I view life, everything about it has been this like accelerated spiritual self-development journey. Like I am
Hmm.
moving at a faster rate of overcoming discomfort and increasing my nervous system's capacity to hold discomfort more every day now in the last few months than I have in years past. Like
Hmm.
every trigger, every insecurity, every doubt or hesitation that I've could even have imagined having up until this point, I've had in the process of building this business and in taking these chances and making these decisions I've made. And what's wild about it is that my coping with the stress and with the sometimes anxiety and the more difficult things that are associated with this process are more under control than they've ever been as well. So it's
Yeah.
strange because with the uptick in questions I have to answer, decisions I have to make, responsibilities that I'm taking on, the ability to meet them has also increased. Like I'm not in a space of burnout. I'm not in a place of being like, wow, this is so overwhelming. I can't do this every day. I'm in this incredibly energized and focused and positive mindset space. And in a lot of ways, my coaching program is me taking women on the journey that I'm taking myself on right now,
Right.
like becoming who I needed to be to step into this space. And it's so much less about doing than it is about being. Like, I think people are doers now, like, do these things instead of
Sure.
be this way.
Yeah.
And then they get lost.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely who you be is a major factor in how the universe is responding and opening opportunities up to you in every moment. And I've learned more about that in the last 6 months than I ever thought possible. I've said multiple times, and I do say that, specifically entrepreneurship and relationships are a spiritual
Hmm.
path, both. And it's all of those things that you said as far as like, well, how do I put myself in these really challenging situations because I want to create this thing in the world that doesn't exist from an entrepreneurial standpoint. My vision, my definite chief aim, in Napoleon Hill's words, I'm putting myself into these situations and now I have to figure out how to claw my way out of it. And all of those insecurities and fears and doubts and imposter syndromes and all of those things do come up. And that is the challenge in my thoughts. Like that's the work. That's like you're doing the work. Like you're consciously putting yourself into these situations and then trusting that you're going to be able to not only meet those challenges, but find the tools that you need that you may not even have in your tool belt yet to
Yep.
be able to get past that and get to the next step and never give up along the way, right? And that there's going to be some messy shit along the way, probably too.
Oh, trust, dude, trust. Like, if I didn't trust some higher power was guiding whatever it is I'm doing every day, I don't think I'd be able to do this. I have like an impermeable amount of trust in the universe. Like the phrase, give it to God. Like
Yeah.
I have given so many things that I used to choose to carry that I didn't need to
Yeah.
carry to
Me
God.
too. Me
Like
too.
I don't even pretend to know what my next month is going to look like. Like I'm fully in a space of surrender of just like whatever happens is meant to happen. I'm doing the things that I know are smartest, resonate with me the most, are educated and feel aligned, and I 100% trust that continuing to move along that path will bring the things into my life that are needed, the opportunities, the people, the relationships that are needed for my dharma to unfold in its most optimal way. Like I fully trust that.
Yeah, yeah, I do too. Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing to be in that place, and I feel the same way you do. That I've never been this regulated. I feel so grounded and regulated in who I be and what I am striving for in my life. That it's a beautiful process that I want to continue to follow. I want that path to continue to unfold in front of me. And the only way that I can do that is to continue to create, to continue to push the boundaries and comfort zones of where I am and what I think is possible for myself. And when I open myself up to that in the same way that, like you said, the opportunities, the people, the like everything just shows up. And it may not be
Hmm.
in the way that I would like it to, or in the timing that I think, I want it or whatever, but it's all happening and I can be present in the moment and be grateful for and joyful with what is happening and unfolding in the moment and not be so attached to this future vision of what I ultimately would love to see in my reality. It's like, okay, if I can be grateful for where I'm at now and I can keep striving towards what I am trying to create, all of those things will appear and all of those things will happen in the way that they're supposed to.
Yeah, yeah. I had a very profound realization about presence that I think you'd find that I think you would find interesting at a Joe Dispenza retreat. And it actually wasn't through Joe, it was through another attendee there. And he lives this very abundant lifestyle. Like he's one of those people who walks into the room and everybody gravitates toward him and wants to have a conversation. And he has this beautiful wife and these beautiful homes and just this beautiful, like, abundant life. And he is the most present person
Hmm.
I've ever spoken to in my life. Like, You know, people when they're talking to you and you just feel like there's nothing else that exists for them except you in that conversation.
Right.
I have always loved that. Like, I feel like it's very charismatic and very magnetic, but I didn't really understand the nuances of that quality of presence until him and I had a conversation about it. And I was like, okay, so like, how do you be? Like, what's your process? How do you attract this abundance in these ways that are just like synchronicity after synchronicity, like on the daily? And he was like, the easiest way that I can describe it is with my presence. So rarely do we need the money, we need an opportunity. Rarely do we need the job, we need an opportunity. Like we always just need opportunities, right? For things to fall
Mhm.
into place in whatever area of life, like financial, spiritual, relationships, family, etc. All we need are these opportunities. And so, one of the things that he said to me was when you're so intentionally and completely present in the present moment, in your present circumstances, who you're presently speaking with, you start to become acutely aware of the fact that everything is an opportunity. So, he'd be
Right.
like one of those guys who would walk into the hotel room and talk to the maid and get the stay extended 2 days, like shit like
Right.
that, because he just valued people so much and he valued the present moment so much that he was willing to explore everything that was happening for him in a meaningful way. So, like, how many times have I probably been at the airport or at a bar or at lunch or going for a walk where I was in my phone or I was distracted by my thoughts and I wasn't present with someone who walked past me or with, a stray dog I could have had, whatever. Like, our lack of presence is our lack of ability to manifest abundance.
Right.
Because if we were truly present, we would understand that every present moment is abundant and whole on its own. And if
Right.
you're already living from moment by moment abundance, then you don't have a choice but to continue live. It just unfolds that way.
Right.
And that really opened my understanding up around presence and manifesting and what abundance is and that mindset. It just kind of unlocked a door for me that I hadn't quite heard in that way before. And it's really changed the way I live my life.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that frame and your experience of it. And for me, it was always based on my own experiences in life. I was very shut down. It was a fear of connection. It was a fear and lack of confidence in connection. So I would avoid it at all costs. And so I look back on my life now and I'm like, wow, there were a couple of decades there where I was completely shut off from opportunity. Like how many opportunities could have shown up in or that were right in front of me that I didn't have the eyes to see, probably a lot. And my reality reflected my inability to open up to that and to connect with that and to receive that level of possibility and those opportunities. And so when it became too painful and I started opening up and getting the skills and relating skills, communication skills, the confidence in general and things like that, like my life has changed immeasurably. And that's why I'm out here doing all of the things that I'm doing because I feel like I'm making up for lost time to some degree. It's like, wow, the world is so much more colorful and expansive and beautiful than it's ever been
Yeah.
because I'm in this place now. And this place now is that presence I think that you're describing.
Yeah, totally. I also don't like necessarily have any regrets or sort of like, damn, I wish I'd been more present because I'm a big believer that things unfold perfectly as they're meant to.
Right.
And opportunities or relationships or money or whatever didn't come then because it wasn't meant to, because you don't know where you'd be now had those things come to you then. And I am way more in love with myself now than I've ever been that I wouldn't even risk that. I wouldn't even be like, well, I wish I could go back 10 years and
Right.
do this differently
Right.
because that would put at risk who I am and where I'm at now. And I'm
Right.
way too in love with that to
Yeah.
entertain
And
that
that's
thought.
that's the same way I look at it too. It's like I wouldn't have the awareness or gratitude for where I'm at now if I hadn't had the experiences of the past, or at least I feel that way. Like there's no way because I'm coming from the duality, those depths, like they say, you can only experience the joy and gratitude to the extent that you've experienced the depths. So I'm at the other end of that pendulum now, and I'm I love it. It's great. It's like
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine my life without those experiences and without that level of perspective and wisdom that it's brought. Because now that I've seen the other side of it, it's like I get it. I
Yeah.
don't get it from theory. I don't get it from, yeah, it's you just say it. Like I get it in my body and I
Mm-hmm.
embody it because I've been there on the other side?
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. I think that's important too, because the journey to get here for me has been very bumpy and in some ways very terrifying, like the dark night of the soul things, the Saturn
Right.
return things, like all of those things. I definitely wouldn't change how challenging they were because they made me who I am. And also, that is the position that people are in that I want to support the most, where I'm like, hey, listen,
Hmm.
I'm on the other side of this. And I can see that you're in like the quicksand or the thick mud or the doubt phase or whatever right now.
Hmm.
And those are the people that like we need to support for to have this like major shift in consciousness on a collective level that we really desperately need in the world. We need people to be helping people on this journey. That's the support that's required right now. Is kind of like all the women that I work with were in positions that in one phase of my life I was in, and I'm like,
Right.
let me help. This is what worked for me. These are the tools that I have now. So like, let's experiment. What's working for you? Like, do you need a somatic release right now? Do you need silence right now and just space to be held? Like, what do you need in order to keep moving forward and feeling supported and feeling seen and witnessed in your experience? Because the moments that I didn't have that when I was going through my journey, oh my God, I could have saved years if I had a me
Yeah.
now. You know what I mean? Just like walking me through
Right.
it and being like, this is part of the process and trust and stay true and keep walking forward. Like that's what I aspire to support people with and to provide as a service.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I think that there is so much value in having guides and mentors along the way without getting too attached to, like we said before, specific dogmatic teachings or learnings or anything, but just having somebody there to tell you, you're beautiful, it's going to be okay, we're going to make it, and or challenging you to the next step. Like my mentor, that was one of my first mentors, real life mentors. Like I read positive psychology books and different things like that. I've listened to Tony Robbins tapes back in the day and all of that, but it didn't really add up. I couldn't really move forward until I started really attracting and magnetizing mentors into my life that saw my potential. They saw things about me that I didn't see in myself. And they said, yeah, you're worth it. And I'm going to lift you up. I'm going to pull you with me and I'm going to challenge you to step up to the plate and effectively get over your own bullshit so that you can become the person that you deserve to be and that I see in you. And so that has been a dozen years or so since that happened. And now I don't know what my life would be like if I didn't have multiple mentors and guides at whatever level teaching me and showing me the next steps along the path. Because, like you said, it really cuts out a lot of the spinning around in circles and being
Yeah.
unsure and all of that. It's like it's amazing when since I've really opened up to this perspective and all of the high performers and people that inspire me and that I inspire to be some aspect of the way they be, they all have multiple coaches in their
Yeah.
lives. It's like, oh, that's the way it works. Oh, okay, well, it took a
Yeah.
long time to really come to that realization and to be able to step into it and understand that most of the high performers are investing in themselves to a degree that people who are not would be shocked, you
Oh,
know?
yeah.
Yeah.
Huge money, big dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just love one of the shifts that I've seen, especially in the coaching industry, and not that that industry doesn't have its flaws like any other industry, but one thing that I do love about it is that it's an opportunity for people with wildly valuable life experience that didn't fit into a business, finance, corporate, whatever structure are
Mm.
now able to leverage and utilize in order to help people. You know, like this didn't exist 20 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. I don't know. The internet really changed things. But on the level that it is now, there
On
are
the
people
level
who
that it is now.
have,
Yeah.
yeah, there are people who have really important life experience that doesn't fit inside the box of what, especially in the West, we deem monetarily valuable. And so to come forward and have your credentials be your life and say, yeah, I have a level of mastery with something like this. And I think that it's something that is required to help support the elevation of collective consciousness into a new space. Like,
Hmm.
fuck yeah, step up and be them. You know,
Yeah.
be that person, like, give that gift. It's our responsibility now at this point. You know, I really feel an obligation as well. When I sit with hesitation or doubt around moving forward with what I'm doing, so in some ways it almost feels selfish to me because it's like, okay, Kel, so you're gonna let your intimidation or this mean comment or feeling like you're not worthy enough to receive stand in the way of helping people that you know you could help. You're gonna let your egocentric view of fear around things that like you're making up override the support that you could provide to people. Like, get it
Right.
together. Like, you
Yeah.
know, get back to your heart. Like, get back to your center and keep moving forward.
What I realized a few years ago is that we're all just coaching each other home, right? And so it'd be like that, right? It's like I remember I've been around long enough to I was talking about this on another podcast that I was listening to Napoleon Hill cassette tape, Think and Grow Rich in my teens, you know,
Hmm.
and there was nobody else in my reality that was operating at any of those levels for
Hmm.
me to latch onto and to become that guide for me. And then in my 20s, I remember I had the whole Tony Robbins, whatever his program was at the time, literally cassette tape volume thing, right? And listen to that. And it was the same thing. It was still like I didn't see anybody living that in my reality. So I had no role models other than just the words that Tony was saying, own your power or whatever that was. It was powerful, but it wasn't palpable. I
Yeah.
couldn't take the next step. And so now I think with the internet, people have been able to get into this phase of like what you're doing, exposing and expressing themselves as having some life skill, wisdom, ability that they can convey. And then instead of everybody under the sun following Tony Robbins, even though all of them do, there's these micro niches that we can all step into and provide extraordinary value at whatever level, whether you're coaching just yourself or one person or 10 people or 100 people or 1,000 or thousands or etc. There's this possibility in the reality of our ability to put ourselves out there in that way on social media and to expose what we know and our thoughts and our perspectives out there to an audience that needs us, right? We need each
Yeah.
other. This is a level of community that has never been possible before. And that's what I've kind of realized about it is there's still 10,000 people at a Tony Robbins event, but I've never been to a Tony Robbins event. I'm sure it's amazing, but I don't need to go to a Tony Robbins event. I need to go to an event where I have direct access to people who can look into my eyes and see into my soul and say, I see this possibility for you, and I'm going to help you access it right
Oh,
now in this moment. You know
oh
what I
yeah.
mean? It's like that's so powerful. And the more of these types of coaches and little communities that pop up, the more possibility that we all have, as you said, for the evolution of humanity ultimately is what we're getting at.
Yeah. It's kind of crunch time for that right now, you know? Like we're
It
gonna
kind of
go
is, isn't it?
If we're gonna go one way or the other, and I just choose to go the other. I just choose to say, okay, well, if my options are that we just collapse or that we make this conscious choice to collectively elevate, like, why wouldn't I
Mhm.
choose that? Why wouldn't I choose my gifts? Why wouldn't I choose my power? Why wouldn't I choose to help? Like, it seems obvious to me. And also, like, one thing I wanted to touch on as well is, especially in the coaching community too, like one of the big pieces of criteria that I use for whether or not somebody really feels authentic to me in their approach instead of just sort of selling programs or I don't know, I think that there's a lot of sort of like false guru
Mhm.
similar to every industry again, people in this space and particularly in the spiritual space too. And so the real like thing for me is embodiment because I wouldn't pay or even go to someone for advice for a problem that I have that they haven't embodied within themselves as something that
Right.
they've either overcome or are in the process of overcoming. So, like, if I have people who, are trying to add value to my life in a way that I haven't seen like the discipline or the compassion or any kind of results on their end to show that that's how they choose to live. That's what they authentically embody. That's what they truly believe in. That's what I think make some coaches special is whether or not they believe their own bullshit.
Yeah.
Because some don't, and they're just great at speaking or doing podcasts or doing whatever. But I do think that holding space really requires a level of self awareness and discipline and compassion and an ability to sit with your own bullshit that really, I mean, not a lot of people are capable of it. I haven't had a lot of space holders in my experience who I was like, wow, you are just brilliant at this. You're brilliant at not allowing any of your shit to come up in this moment. You're brilliant at softly accepting my innate intelligence to heal myself. You're brilliant at asking questions instead of shouting comments at me. Like, you have to be a facilitator or a coach or any kind of spiritual guide, you really got to be on top of your shit.
Yeah.
And I think those are the people that I trust the most who've really put the
Mhm.
work in.
Yeah. Well, I'm blessed in the sense that I joined a leadership program last year, Ascension Leadership Academy, based here in Austin, and through that coaching, they have multiple levels, but level 1 and 2 was coached by a guy named Chris Lee, and he is that person.
Yeah.
He's that person, like you were saying before, like everywhere he goes, the charisma and the magnetism of just who he is in the world opens up possibilities for everyone around him. And because he's so giving, he's so outwardly focused, everything comes back to him. He walks into the coffee shop near where the sessions are held and they're handing him lattes because they, oh my gosh, Chris, it's so good to see you. Like this, he makes everybody feel so amazing. They want to give everything back to him, you know? And I'm actually going to be with him this weekend. I'm going back to staff one of his programs this weekend in Austin, and I'm really looking forward to stepping into that level of exposure to him when I'm not a direct student, so I can really take a step back and not be so in my own experience of it. And I mean, this guy is a master. He's
Yeah.
literally a master, and he embodies it in the way that you were describing, and it's just it's phenomenal to see. And I look forward to learning more through this experience about how to become more of that myself. He taught me that I was being stingy with my energy, and that's why I didn't have the reality that I wanted in my life. And he was right. I was so individual. This was only 6 months ago, and I was still so walled up, even though I had expressed elements of my life and things like that. I still had these walls of, well, I don't need to be nice to everybody when I go out on the town or whatever, go around town or whatever. That's just not who I am.
Yeah.
But if you're not that way and you're not giving and you're not focusing outward on just making anybody's day from the barista to the janitor, if you can't make their day better just by even saying hi or waving to your neighbor or whatever small little thing can be so meaningful for people. And the more that you realize that you can make that level of impact without that much effort, the world starts to kind of respond and
Yeah.
give that back to you.
That's such a beautiful example of a person whose presence create like I love the way you said that. You said his presence creates opportunities for other people, not just
Right.
for him. Like
Oh, sure. For
you're
sure.
drawn to people like that. And I think opportunity is people, like community. Opportunity is community because if you have that type of magnetism where everyone wants to be around you and you are mutually symbiotically adding support and value to each other's lives, you're just going to build your big network. And then,
Mm.
like those friends who I have these friends where I'll tell them I'm going to any city in the world, and they'll be like, "Oh, we know Heather and Mark and Clay. We can hook you up with all these people." And then all of a sudden, it's like, "Oh shit, I have a place to stay in Portugal, and I know all the restaurants." And then you go to the restaurants and you meet the people, and they go, "Hey, do you want a ticket to the show we're going to?" And then all of a sudden, your life just unfolds. Like these
Yeah.
opportunities are everywhere. And I think like a personal struggle that I had as well was when I was in my stories and I was in my trauma and I leaned more into the force side of things, into the surrender side of things, I viewed community more from a position of leverage, right? Where it was like, and this I think is a pit so many people fall into, where it's like, what can they do for me? Like,
Right.
as opposed to, what can I do for them? Like, how can we support each other? And it's as
Right.
simple as shifting those questions in your head to like, I wonder how I could support that person. I wonder how I could have
Yeah.
a meaningful connection with that person. Because those are
Right.
the things that bring you the good opportunities. The force and the manipulation and the like synthetically setting things up instead of being authentic to yourself, those bring you relationships that fail and deals that fail and
Yeah.
just an energy that doesn't work.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that's the same way I used to look at it in business and life in general is like, okay, I'm targeting people who I feel like we can have some level of exchange in business or whatever, but it's a selfish approach because it's like I'm not doing it unless I feel like I'm going to get something back, unless I
Hmm.
think there's something I can get back. But this other approach is I'm giving it no matter what.
Hmm.
I'm out there. I know that I can help this person or do something for this person that's going to better their lives, and it's unrelated to whether I'm going to get anything in return.
Right, for sure. But when I released that was when my life changed. Like when I
Yeah.
viewed people as collaborators and as
Right.
co-creators and as community instead of as something to be conquered or leveraged or tricked or manipulated, whatever, like whatever we're taught, the programming around how we need to like use each other instead of support each other, that was a big game changer in my life as well, because I really learned what community was for the first time. And then when I
Right.
had community, authentic, peaceful community in my life, then all of a sudden opportunities were everywhere. Like it was
Right.
like, oh, how was I just standing in my own way for that fucking long? Like how did that happen?
Right. Yeah, you couldn't see. You weren't resonating at that frequency.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the way it has been for me. And it's like what you said about like those are the deals that go south. Those are the things that don't work out. Those in having so much expectation and yeah, I guess attachment to the outcomes and then having them not work out. Those are soul crushing moments. And I had many of those in my life. But this other approach is like, okay, well, we're going to collaborate, and I'm going to trust up front. I'm going to be the one that puts out the first level of trust
Mm-hmm.
that we're in alignment and we're going to play together and all of that, but I'm not attached to it.
Right.
And
Right.
I'm just doing that, and then if it doesn't work out, okay, it doesn't work out. You know,
Yeah.
like it's
And I've
okay.
I've made like I give my trust very easily,
Hmm.
but I take it away just as easily. So like
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of, I have my like I do my best to have a good judge of character, and also, people make mistakes and we interact with the
Course.
wrong people and we engage in the wrong things and the wrong projects and what have you. But I still would rather live with the pain or repercussions of having an open heart and the consequences that are associated with keeping that openness when someone comes in and violates it or breaks it. I would still rather sit with the pain of an open heart than, oh my God, than like the heaviness of a closed one, you
Hmm.
know? Like I just felt
Yeah.
that in my body and was like, oh no, I can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely the way it is. And I think most people are still in that programming or that frequency where it's like, oh, don't put yourself out there. You might get hurt. Yeah, maybe I might get hurt,
Hmm. More
and
than likely I will at some point, yeah.
yeah, and that's okay because I know I'm either going to win or I'm going to learn or it's going to work. Without the all the expectation and attachment. Again, I think that's where the ultimate cause of suffering resides. And
For
having that kind of
sure. Yeah,
yeah.
totally.
Well,
Totally.
I feel like we could talk forever.
I do too. I wasn't
Maybe we
sure if you
should.
were
We sh-
gonna.
we should talk more.
Perhaps we should consider a series. I love this, by the way, too, just like riffing with people who get it. Like I
Yeah,
could
me
spend,
too.
I've spent the majority of my day too, sort of just like not having the most interesting conversations or doing the most interesting things. But this is like what energizes me is like operating and playing in that frequency of people who are in alignment too. Like
Yeah.
those conversations and discoveries and reflections are so potent,
Hmm.
and so important too right now, I think. Like this is such a high value thing to be doing.
Well, I feel like the community that we created through the Go for Your Win program was amazing. That was
Hmm.
one of the first real tight communities with more than a handful of people
Yeah.
that I've been involved with. And the next year we all went to Playa del Carmen to Joey's wedding, and
Hmm.
there's relationships and babies that came. All these things have happened, and it's just like, wow. I mean, that was amazing. It was just such a beautiful time, and I knew from the moment that we all got together, like all of these people are my people,
Hmm.
and you're my people. So I appreciate you coming on here and letting me know where you're at and how much you've grown, how much you've learned,
Oh
and
yeah.
your epic mind vision, where you're going in the world. Because I think that I mean I definitely agree that the world needs more of this kind of resonance and perspective and guidance to get to the next level. We are at an inflection point in consciousness, and
Hmm.
being aware and conscious of what's going on is definitely something that I feel is spreading quickly, and there's people who are coming into an awareness of it, but they don't know what to do next, or they
Yeah.
get afraid, they get fearful of it because they see these certain aspects of it that maybe aren't for them. So I commend you for creating space for women, particularly niching down and being like, I can be that guide for women. And I think that's beautiful that you're doing that.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much. I can't
Yeah.
wait to see you next, and thank you for having me on. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, I'm sure many listeners will also love this conversation and want to tune in and follow you, get to know you. The ones that do, how can they do that? How do they get a little bit more of Kelly?
Yeah, for sure. So I actually have a podcast as well, with a really good friend of mine. She's an NLP coach.
Nice.
It's called the Mindset Medicine Podcast. You can give us a
Perfect.
follow or give us a listen.
I'll
That's our
link it up
Instagram
and
page.
yeah, I'll
We're
link it
also
up
on you.
too.
Cool, perfect. And then my Instagram page, my company is called Of the Medicine. And I offer a wide variety of coaching programs, one-on-one work, breath work, sound healing. There's kind of a bunch of things. I'll bucket it into one and I'll a la carte as well. So if you look me up and want to chat, let me know and we can figure out what's good for you.
Nice. Awesome, Kelly. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
And I guess to bring it to a close, I want to give you a namaste. And,
Course,
you know,
namaste.
I love you so much. Thank you so much for coming on. I look forward to seeing you again very
Yeah.
soon.
I love you too, brother. Thank you. Namaste.